Welcome to Thorn Divinations. I'm Thorn, and I'm here to interview you about what you do today.
Hi, Kellen. Thanks for having me on your show. I'm really happy to be talking to you.
Thank you for joining me. Would you mind telling the audience what your name is and what you do?
Thanks. I'm Shannon Walbran, and I've been practicing as a spirit guide interpreter since 2003.
2003 is when you started?
So, what is a spirit guide interpreter?
So, yeah, what is a spirit guide interpreter?
I mean, you know me as a psychic, so I'm a psychic, and I bring you messages from your spirit guides. And then maybe your question might be, but you translate messages from the Fae, and I generally translate messages from your spirit guides. Maybe we could talk about what the difference is between those two, families of entities. What do you think?
Absolutely, that sounds like a great idea.
How do you define, when people don't know, how do you define who fairies are or what the fae means?
So, the way I would define Fae, at least the fairies in historical culture, are nature spirits. So, any spirit that falls under the fairy umbrella, which originates from Celtic but is found all over the world, is just nature spirits in general. You have your common ones, which are like elves and things like that, elves, pixies, but just nature spirits in general are what the Fae really are about.
Do you think the fae have a positive agenda towards humanity?
Absolutely. You have your two different types of fae. You have your Seelie and Unseelie.
Let's hear about that.
So your Seelie are fairies that trust humans, that want to help humans. Those are your fairies that come to you and are going to want to help you succeed in whatever you're trying to do.
Okay.
Then you have your Unseelie. Unseelies are the fae that were slated by the past and stick to themselves, don't want to be helpful, don't want anything to do with humans. Both can develop a bond with a human, though, but your Seelie are going to be more so inclined to help humans.
Is this kind of like but I don't mean to sound offensive at all. Would it be kind of like a dog versus a wolf? Like a wolf is a wild creature, but a dog is a domesticated creature who could develop a friendship with a family. I mean that I mean that in a nice way. I hope it's
Absolutely. I think them understanding, yes, wolves are going to have a lot harder time developing that bond with humans.
In fact, they probably don't or won't, and that's okay.
And that's going to be more so your Unseelie fae.
Yeah.
And then, your dog breeds that are, happy to be around humans, want to be around humans, are going to be more your Seelie.
Okay. All right. Well, that helps me understand it because I didn't really have such a clear understanding. So if I could explain what I mean by the spirit guides, some people confuse them with ancestors. So spirit guides are generally humans who have lived in previous lifetimes, but not necessarily our very own grandparents or great-grandparents who know us individually. They're not necessarily blood related to us. They're humans who lived many lives and have now evolved to the state of teachers, and only live on the other side, but their agenda is purely positive towards humanity, and they work as professionals. Whereas my great-grandmother might have kind of a personal agenda towards me and want me to have 17 children like she did. My spirit guides do not want me to have 17 children. They would like me to have an independent life of power in which I can use my gifts. So it's almost as if they're university professors who are assigned to you in your case, and they definitely want to help, and they are on purpose trying to help you, but they aren't attached to your outcome. Like their feelings wouldn't be hurt if you decided to go this way or that way. They just know what would probably work best for you.
So they were earthbound spirits at one point in time, though.
I do believe so. So, when I channel, I could channel your spirit guides, your angels, your ancestors, and then sometimes other voices come through who may or may not want to be identified. And sometimes I ask and sometimes I don't ask. But I'm working with the highest echelon of beings who really only have positive agendas.
So when you split up angels and spirit guides, are they two separate beings to
I
you then?
totally split those up. Yes, I really do. I divide those. So to me, God, the source, the creator of all, the almighty beginning of and end of all time, divides itself, oneself, into smaller particles, and those particles are just as divine as the big source energy, but come down into little step down miniature fractal versions, and that's an angel. So an angel is, in my opinion, God in a tiny small package. Like you have your coal plant, your nuclear power plant, your electricity plant downtown, and then you have where you plug in your phone, same electricity, but if you tried to plug in your phone into the coal plant, you and your phone would explode.
Interesting way. I've never heard it described that way before.
It's one of my favorite ways of describing it.
Definitely brings a new light to how I would view angels now.
Okay.
Can other people learn to do what you do? Or is it something you're born with?
So both of those answers are yes. I was born with it, but I had to develop it, just as if I were born with a great singing voice, but I had to take singing lessons and become a professional singer. So I was born with the gift of sensitivity, but when I was a child, it was a deficit, it was a handicap, it was a trouble, it was a burden, it was something that was really hard for me to handle. I was sensitive to everything. I was oversensitive to light and sound and other people, and I would feel other people's feelings, and it was basically a disaster. And then as I grew up and I got boundaries and found paths of, for example, recovery, where I learned how to not be codependent, and I learned a lot about taking care of my body. I became stronger and more mature, and I stepped into my gifts, and now I can handle doing readings for people, all day long if I want to. Can everybody learn how to receive messages? Yes, and they should.
So, what you say yes and they should, can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure.
On how would they go about it and why should they?
Yep, exactly. So I believe that you and each person has a direct silver thread between you and the divine source, or you and your higher self, you and your spirit guides, you and the nature spirits. There are threads. And why wouldn't you want input? Why wouldn't you want insight, especially from beings who have a helicopter view, who know more than we do? Why, if you had Google, why wouldn't you Google? You would Google. Now that we have Google in our generation, we're like Googling all the time. In fact, when you don't Google, it's a problem. You're like, just Google it. Come on, just Google it. So that's why I think that we should, because we can, and because it gives us fantastic insight, at least into what our next step is. Where I think people go wrong is that they want to know what the 17th step is. Like, okay, so if I do that, and then, okay, then what if then after that, then 5 years from now, and then tell me. I'm like, no, we're just going to talk about the very next step. What is the next right thing to do? And then how can you develop that? Well, the first question I would ask you is, what are your 5 senses, and which of your 5 senses would be the strongest one? So seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching. Then I can ask you, Callan, which one do you think is your strongest?
My strongest sense is probably hearing.
Okay, so then I would say probably best to develop your clairaudience, which would be your physical hearing and then expanded into your 6th sense hearing. So we all have 5 senses, and if somebody said their eyes are great, like they're good at design, they're good at photography, they love, their cupboards are all in order, they always wear matching clothes, then I would say, okay, you should develop your clairvoyance. And somebody who has a really strong nose, who can always tell when something's off in the fridge, should develop their clairalience, their clairgustance, their clairsentience. That's the easiest one, because if you're already good at it, you might as well work with your strengths.
So if somebody, say, has trouble vision issues,
Okay.
Would they then have a harder time developing their clairvoyance?
In my opinion, yes. So some people, I don't know if you've heard about this, but some people cannot visualize. They have an absence. It's called aphantasia. That's what it's called. So a meaning the absence and fantasia, the way to imagine something. So if I said, can you think of a pink elephant? Can you think of a pink elephant?
Yes.
But some people can't. They're like, I can see the word pink and elephant, or, you know, I can look at a picture and I can say that's an elephant, but that's using their real eyes. And if I say, okay, imagine there's an apartment and it's got about 5 beds, they're like, I need to actually really see it with my, you need to take me there and you need to show me the apartment. Then clairvoyance is not going to be the first thing that we're going to work with them. Probably they're much stronger in their clairsentience. Probably I'm going to say, do you get tummy aches? You know, do you have sore shoulders? Do you have a hard time sleeping? Then we're going to work with them on their clairsentience. So we'll take their sense, their first sense that's their strongest, and we'll build into it. So clairvoyance, as you say, you know, your eyes are good, your ears are good, clairaudience, your ears are good. I would say, let's practice asking a question and then turning on the radio. Blip, radio off. Okay, we'll try it again. Ask a question, change the station, radio on, radio off. Okay, what did you hear? And what did that mean to you? So then you hear something, and you make a connection and you get a message and you laterally think and you connect the question to the message. So it's all about lateral thinking. It's all about taking one idea and matching it with another.
Awesome. That's actually a really, really interesting way to explain it. A lot of people just say, oh, visualize. And
then what?
Yeah, I've met students who can't visualize. And so I'm always definitely giving me a way to help those people who can't visualize. Let's try this.
Sure. Also, I'd like to say that a lot of people start to develop their gifts, their clairs, and they say, I've got a feeling. I've got a feeling. I'm like, cool. What could it mean, the feeling? And they go like, I'm tingling. I'm like, that's so awesome. Let's work with the tingling. Okay, what was the question that you had? Or at least the topic or the problem or the something. And they're like, I don't know, I've just got this feeling. You know what that's like? That's like getting on a bus, going in the right direction, you're going north, and having no idea what stop to get off on. So it's nice that you're going in the right direction. Where does it go? What does it mean? What's the destination? How are you going to get to Aldi? You got to get off the bus.
Excuse me, absolutely.
So that's why a big part of my practice is helping you develop a question. Helping you develop a real question. Go ahead, ask me. How do you develop a real question?
So how would you develop a real question, and what's defined as a real question in your mind?
Well, I think a non-real question, I mean, it's real, it feels real, is help. Or I'm at a crossroads. You're like, yes? Can we narrow that down a bit? So a real question has the 4 P's. It is personal. It's an I question. It's not allowed for me to ask, do they love me? Is she going to hire me? Will they give me my money back? That's like, for me, that's karmically just out. I cannot ask a question about another person. It has to be I. So it's personalized. It's proactive. What should I do about this? Should I take that job? Should I do that? Should I move to Texas? Should I go there? Should I try that? In that, it needs to be positive. I can't ask, should I not stop smoking? Like, what? Then when you get an answer, is it going to be, I should stop smoking? I shouldn't stop smoking? I should do something else? So it's, should I stay in this relationship, even though you totally want to leave the relationship? You know, should I stay? Should I go to Texas? Not, should I wait before I move to Texas? Like, then what does the answer mean, right? So it's personal, proactive, it's positive, and it's precise. The last P is precise. It has to be in the present. So it can't be, should I move to Japan in 25 years? Sure, I'd love to do that. But it's, should I get the Duolingo app and start learning Japanese today, precise, in the present?
So you feel, so if somebody came to you with a
Yes.
question on, is this person cheating, you wouldn't answer said
I
question.
couldn't. So how would I do that instead? I would say,
You would say the question should be,
yeah, go ahead. The question should be,
should I stay in this relationship?
and maybe should I put more energy and trust into this relationship, which isn't the same as, is that person trustworthy, but it's, should I invest more energy into this relationship? Or, or should I take a break? Or should I give this relationship space? Should I commit? Should I be monogamous in this relationship? So it's all really on me. Whether the person is cheating or not is terrible. I mean, I don't want that person to be cheating on them. But like, should I move forward in this relationship? I can't control the other person as much as I'd love to.
So it should be like a one choice type of question. It shouldn't be.
Well, yes, when we're learning divination, we do one choice at a time. So then we get a yes on should I stay in the relationship. Then we ask, how can I make that work? And in the how can I make that work, it's should I move in with the person or not, and then should we get engaged, or should we make this legal, or should we keep it informal? Should we have children together? Or is that, should I have children at this stage in my life? Or should we open a business together? There are a lot of, first of all, is should I put more energy into this other person? Maybe you're going to get a no. And you're like, well, we're going to, move to Hawaii and open a hotel together. Oh my gosh. So then you can take so should I move to Hawaii? Should I open a hotel? Or should I do that? Or should I just go into business with this person and maybe not be romantically involved with them? Life is a choose your own adventure story. And as you get questions, then you can divide those questions into smaller sub-questions. And what do you get out of that, Callan, when you do that?
Get more clarity, more answers, better answers suited for the person, I would say.
And then when I'm coaching a person over time, right? So I have coaching groups where I work with people day by day by day. I do daily coaching. They get so many answers every day, every day. What happens in that person's life?
I would assume that it would change. It would become better for them.
Much. They move to Hawaii. They open the hotel. They figure out how to run the hotel. Then they break up with the person because that person was cheating on them, but I couldn't tell them that. I had an idea that they probably were, but the person had to discover it for themselves,
Right. So in your readings, you wouldn't give like bad news, such as this person is sick, this person is.
Yes, I could, but there would always have to be a solution. So some people come and they're like, do I have anything to worry about in my health? And I think, oh, what a terrible question, because it's like, should I worry? No, you should never worry. But what about this? Should I do something about this cough? Should I do something? Now we're getting somewhere.
Because it's that proactive.
Yeah. And maybe how can I solve this cough?
Okay.
And then the answer would be quit milk. Because you have dairy every day and you know that is not good for you and it gives you a runny nose and it's like really bad for you. On top of the other stuff that you're doing, at least stop the milk. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, making sense? So those are my patterns. Look for the clairs, look for the senses, look for the clairs, build on that, start with a yes or no, and then use tools. So we can use any kind of tools. We can use a pendulum, we can use cards, we can use muscle testing. I love muscle testing. Do you use muscle testing?
Never heard of muscle testing.
It's used by kinesiologists. So a kinesiologist would test allergies by saying, can Shannon eat wheat? No. Can Shannon eat chocolate? A little bit. Should Shannon have sugar? Not really. Can Shannon have meat? Yes. If you try to press down on my arm right now, say meat.
Meat.
Okay. Now say milk.
Milk.
Now say bread.
Bread.
Mm-hmm. Now I promise you, I'm not playing. Okay. Now say something weird. Say any vegetable that you can think of.
Can Shannon have cucumbers?
No, actually. No. Say another one. Now I know. I'll close my eyes and you mouth it. Okay, so I won't be able to tell. Do some vegetable. I can't hear you. It's a yes. I can totally have that. What was it?
Carrots?
Yeah, I'm good with carrots. Yeah, yeah. So that's muscle testing from a kinesiologist who does food testing on you. It's really interesting. You get a whole list of foods that you can and can't have. But what we do is we ask yes or no questions like this. Yes, no. Yes, no. So that's one of the things that I teach. So I'm asking my body to serve as a pendulum to get a yes, no. And then people can ask yes, no's all the time as long as they stick with that I, right? It still can't be about the other person. But should I go talk to that person about an apartment? No. Now, it's either no for the person or no, it's not the right time, but it's a don't do that. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So our bodies then become the tool.
That's right.
Instead of needing external tools.
Yes. I mean, because in a supermarket, it's a little bit awkward to like do a spread, like on top of the meat case, like that.
Oh, come on. We've all
I'm
done
sure
that
you do
before.
that. Cal and Thorn at the Lund's supermarket doing a spread.
How else are we supposed to get clients?
Well, sample card.
Oh, so,
how do people find you?
How do people find you?
By accident. A lot of people are listening to the radio, and they'll say, I never listened to that radio station, and I tuned in, and then you were on the radio, and I really needed to hear that, and then I really needed to talk to you. So I love to do call-in radio shows.
Fun.
People are like, should I move to Georgia? And I go, yes, because your grandmother's from there, and it's really a place of history for you, and you've got so much power there, and it's really where your land is. They're like, yes, actually it was my great-grandmother, but cool. So it's like, I don't have to be 1,000% accurate as long as I give them the right idea, but it's usually accurate.
Awesome. So, so you do radio shows? Is there any
I have done a lot of radio shows, and I love it. I love to do podcasts, like with you.
Awesome.
And I have a website, which is my name, shannonwalbran.com, and I offer one-on-one sessions, and I offer group coaching, which is my favorite thing to do, because how much progress can somebody make, She moves to a new country, she gets married, she has kids, she sorts out her family issues, she becomes healthy, she drops her addictions, and she learns how to get her own answers. That's really the point.
So you're about uplifting
yes.
people and getting them to be the best that they can be. How do you benefit from this?
Thank you. That's a great question. Financially, okay, so people pay me for my work. When I started off in 2003, and I started off by doing it for free and super undercharging myself. Like, I was on a radio show way back then, and I announced my fees and stuff, and the person turned the microphone off and said, "You can't charge that little." And I was like, oh, geez, now I'm so uncomfortable. But I didn't realize that it was making me sick because it was an unfair exchange of energy. I was giving so much and not receiving enough, even in an energetic exchange. So I started to get anemic and like chronic fatigue syndrome and really weak. Then I'm fine now.
Well, I'm glad to see that you're fine, and glad that you could be here for our show today.
Thank you, Kellen.
So what advice do you have for other practitioners in the community?
Besides charging money, which I really totally think that people should do. I think that people should charge money not in order to be rich or in order to be famous, but because they give great value and because clients benefit and change their lives based on effective, evidential answers. If I gave random answers that didn't make sense, I don't think that would be helpful. But if I gave evidential answers that are like, yes, because you have this pain in your shoulder, or yes, because of what happened yesterday with your housemate, and remember that thing that happened to you when you were a kid, and it all builds up into, and so therefore you should, it's trustworthy. So what I want to tell practitioners is give evidence. Don't be afraid to say weird evidence, just like pieces that come into your mind. You could say German Shepherd dog, or you could say red Volkswagen car, or you could say terrible kindergarten teacher. And the person is like, okay, yes, I know what they're going for. I get it. It was a purple Volkswagen, but I get it. I know what they mean. give evidence. It's useful.
Good to know.
Don't be afraid to give it a try. It doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be a photograph.
But just give the evidence that comes
Everything.
to you because it's coming to you for a reason.
Yes, and you're trying as hard as you can to be a translator. If you've ever learned a foreign language, you know that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to say amigo, and it should have been amiga, you know. But the person who's listening to you is like, oh, they mean friend. It's okay. They can understand it even if you make little mistakes.
So, what is your ideals? Like, what are your core ideals for doing this work?
Thank you. It's social justice. So I believe a lot of people have been oppressed and disempowered throughout our human history. And I want to give people a sense of I can change my life, but I don't believe that people can just pick themselves up by their bootstraps and make it happen. I believe that if we have tools and we know what to do next, then we can make changes in our lives. So what I want people to do is to have the strength and the power to make the changes that they need to make, using their logic and their evidence.
Awesome. So, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I just wanted them to leave. The last thing I'd like to say is you are loved and you are guided.
Thank you so much for joining me here on Thorn Divinations. I'm so grateful to have met you as a practitioner and provider, and now as a friend. And what plans do you have moving forward before we end the show?
Thank you for having me on the show, and I look forward to sharing these lessons with more and more people around the world. And I guess for myself, it would be more travel and more meeting people like you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And if you ever want to book a session with Shannon here, all of the links will be down in the comment section below. So thank you so much for coming, or for
being here with you, Kellen. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Bye, guys.